They said Africa was free, but look closer. The chains are still there, only polished and renamed democracy. In Cameroon tonight, the streets are burning with silence. The ballots have spoken, but the people have not. An old ruler sits again upon his throne, and a young generation watches their future slip through trembling fingers. Then, like thunder through a graveyard, a voice tears the air. Power is never given. It must be taken. Oh, the voice belongs to Ibrahim Traoré, the captain from Burkina Faso, whose words cut deeper than any bullet. He does not speak as a politician. He speaks as a soldier of dignity, a son of Africa who refuses to kneel. His message strikes the heart of every betrayed nation. If you wait for your oppressor to free you, you will die waiting. From Ouagadougou to Douala, from the Sahel to the Atlantic, a new flame is spreading. The flame of awakening. This is not a speech. It is an alarm, a warning to tyrants, a mirror to the silent, and a call to every young African who still believes freedom must be earned, not begged. Stay until the end, because what you are about to hear may rewrite the story of Africa itself. Power, a word they use to hypnotize us, the same word they use to control us. In the classrooms of Yaoundé, in the markets of Douala, in the villages of Bamena, people whisper the same question. How long must we pretend to be free? Because freedom without sovereignty is theater, and theater without truth is slavery wearing a flag. After the latest election, Cameroon stands once more on the edge of illusion. Paul Biya, 92 years old, has been declared the winner again. Official figures show 53%, but in the streets, no one believes the math. Opposition cries foul. Human Rights Watch counts the wounded, and the people count the years. Over 4 decades of the same signature on every law, every contract, every betrayal. Yet amid this fatigue, something new is stirring a rhythm, a rumble, a restlessness that cannot be silenced by curfews or bullets, because consciousness, once awakened, does not return to sleep. And that is precisely what frightens those who still hold the keys to our cages. Ibrahim Traoré, the captain from Burkina Faso, knew this truth before he ever took office. He learned that the colonial system did not vanish. It adapted. It traded uniforms for suits, bayonets for balance sheets, and occupation for aid. They changed the chains, not the hands that hold them. For decades, Africa was told to wait. Wait for investment, wait for development, wait for permission. But Traore looked at the soil of Ouagadougou, rich, wounded, waiting, and he said no. He said that power, like land, must be cultivated by the people themselves. And in Cameroon, that truth echoes louder today than ever, because what is happening now is not democracy. It is choreography, the dance of the old regime. Same music, same steps, same applause written in advance. And yet, the youth are no longer clapping. Look closely at the faces of the protesters. They are young enough to have been born after the Cold War, but old enough to know the taste of broken promises. They have watched leaders fly to Paris for orders and return with debt disguised as aid. They have watched the same hands sign contracts that strip their forests and mines, while television calls it foreign partnership. They know that colonialism never died. It changed its accent. Traore calls it mental occupation. The belief that salvation must come from somewhere else, that Europe must validate our elections, that Washington must bless our policies, that investors must decide our destiny. But what if, as he says, the only validation Africa needs is the mirror? This is the wound Cameroon carries tonight, the wound of dependence disguised as peace. The world applauds stability, But stability built on silence is not peace. It is paralysis. It is the art of managing the cage so the birds forget how to fly. And the tragedy is that the new colonizer no longer arrives in ships. He arrives in suits, in contracts, in cables of diplomacy. He does not plant flags. He plants fear. Fear that without him, Africa will starve, collapse, disappear. But as Ibrahim Traoré once said in a gathering of youth in Ouagadougou, it is not poverty that kills a nation. It is submission. Cameroon knows that submission well. Its young men flee across deserts and seas, not because they lack courage, but because their own leaders no longer believe in their people. Its farmers labor on fertile soil, while foreign corporations reap the harvest. Its teachers raise a generation of dreamers, while its rulers raise walls around their palaces. This is not destiny. It is designed. The system was built to recycle despair, to keep the people working, praying, waiting for reforms that never come, for leaders who never leave, for change that never arrives. But history has shown one immutable truth. No empire, foreign or domestic, can imprison an idea once it has caught fire. And that fire is now visible in the eyes of the Cameroonian youth, in the chants of the market women, in the whispers of soldiers who still remember the meaning of honor. The same fire that once lit Ouagadougou is flickering in Ya. The same defiance that drove Thomas Sankara to challenge the world is now rising again, younger, angrier, unstoppable, because the people who awaken are more dangerous than any army. Cameroon stands tonight between two paths, submission or sovereignty. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the continent watches, holding its breath. Because if one nation dares to break the pattern, the echo will not stop at its borders. The question now is not whether Africa will rise, but who will ignite the flame first. Every revolution begins as a whisper, then it becomes a roar. The voice of Ibrahim Traoré did not emerge from a vacuum. It rose from the ashes of men who had spoken before him, men whose blood still marks the soil of the continent. Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Dernem, à notre histoire. Désespoir. Sankara en est dit. Si lui te nourrit, contre lui. Il ne condamnait pas la générosité. Il exposait la dépendance. Sa plus grande rébellion n'est pas contre la France, mais contre l'idée que l'Afrique doit demander la permission à exister. Lorsqu'il a renommé Doméné à Burkina Faso, le terre de droit, he was not just changing a name, he was resurrecting dignity. Lumumba, the young lion of Congo, dared to tell Belgium, "We are no longer your slaves." They silenced him with bullets, but his voice still echoes through every protest that refuses to kneel. And Nkrumah, the visionary from Ghana, who warned, "Africa must unite or perish." These were not speeches. They were signatures written in courage. And each of them paid the ultimate price for daring to pronounce the word freedom in a language the empire could not tolerate. Yet their deaths did not bury the dream. They buried only the bodies. The ideas multiplied. Traoré stands as their spiritual heir, the son who carries the unbroken torch. His uniform may be different, his generation digital, but his mission remains the same, to reclaim the stolen seat of power. When he speaks, it is as if Sankara whispers through him. The cadence, the defiance, the clarity, all of it feels like the rebirth of a generation that refuses to forget. And perhaps that is why the world fears him. Not for his army, but for his echo. From Ouagadougou to Douala, something is stirring, a pulse, invisible yet powerful, connecting youth across borders. Social media now does what colonial borders once tried to prevent. It unites. There are rumors that a covert network of student and worker organizers stretching from Douala to Ouagadougou has been quietly coordinating dates for synchronized, peaceful civic actions, according to what has been circulating on social media. But this has not been confirmed. Whether true or not, the idea itself is enough to shake the ground because fear is born of silence, and silence is dying. In universities, in markets, in barracks, a question repeats like a drum beat. What would Sankara do? And the answer comes not as words, but as action. In 2025, young activists in Cameroon painted murals of Traore and Sankara side by side, not as presidents, but as brothers in defiance. Beneath their portraits, one phrase glows in red: "Power is never given." These are not mere slogans. They are survival codes for a generation that refuses to be spectators. You can feel it in the art, the music, the tone of every conversation. The youth no longer want inspiration. They want instruction. They are not looking for saviors. They are becoming one another's teachers. Across Africa, songs once censored are now sung in stadiums. Flags once feared are waved openly. The continent is not falling apart. It is waking up, and the alarm clock is wearing the face of Traore. Of course, not everyone welcomes this awakening. The old order watches in discomfort. The elites who built their wealth and obedience now tremble at the sound of disobedience. Those who once paraded as patriots suddenly sound like colonizers when they warn, "Beware of instability." But what is instability, if not the shattering of a lie? For decades, the lie was simple: Africa cannot survive without its masters. Yet here stands a young man from Burkina Faso, proving the opposite, not with speeches, but with actions. He cut ties with dependency, restructured military alliances, and rejected dictates from abroad. Whether one agrees or not, the gesture itself is revolutionary, a generation reclaiming its agency. And Cameroon listens. Because when one nation rises, the others remember their spine. From the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, the spark of resistance moves like dry season fire. What was once whispered is now shouted. What was once forbidden is now demanded. They said the spirit of Sankara was dead. But how can fire die when the forest is still dry? You can imprison a man, but you cannot imprison memory. You can assassinate a leader, but not a lesson. Today, the lesson is clear. Every generation must fight its own battle for dignity, not against foreigners, but against forgetfulness. Ibrahim Traoré is not the first to carry this torch, and he will not be the last. He is simply the reminder that the torch still burns, that sovereignty is not a relic, but a responsibility. And if Cameroon listens closely, it will hear the same heartbeat that once echoed in Ouagadougou. People who remember are people who rise. The flames are spreading, and the old empires can smell the smoke. Cameroon bleeds, but the well calls it peace. The election has come and gone, but the wounds remain open. Officially, Paul Biya has been declared winner once again with 53.66% of the vote. But the real numbers are not on the paper. They are in the streets, in the bodies of the beaten, in the screams that echo through the night. In Ya, protesters faced tear gas instead of transparency. In Douala, they were met not with ballots, but with batons. Reuters reports at least 4 dead. Human rights groups say it could be 6. Hundreds have been arrested. Mothers still wait outside police stations with photographs of missing sons. And yet, the government calls it stability. The European Union expresses deep concern. Washington calls for restraint. But for the people, those words sound like a broken record, diplomatic sympathy that changes nothing. Because Cameroon's pain is not a headline, it is a pattern. For 40 plus years, the same name, the same face, the same power. Paul Biya has ruled since 1982, older than most of his voters, yet still younger than his ambition. His rule has become a calendar of repetition. Every 5 years, ballots fall like rain, and the result is always the same. The sun never sets on the throne. But something has shifted. For the first time in decades, fear is losing its voice, and the youth are finding theirs. They no longer ask, "Can we change?" They ask, "Why haven't we?" In the crowded alleys of Douala. Young painters have turned anger into art. Walls once plastered with campaign posters now blaze with graffiti that reads, "We are not afraid." Musicians sing songs that the state radio will never play. Songs about dignity, unity, rebellion. Their lyrics travel faster than police trucks. This Traore understands because he has seen how despair transforms into power when the people remember who they are. He once said, "Our continent is not poor, it is stolen." And the people of Cameroon now know how that theft feels, not only in the mines of cobalt and bauxite, but in the stolen right to decide. The theft of youth, of dreams, of time. The tragedy of Cameroon is not that it suffers. It is that it endures silently. Its mountains stand tall. Its rivers run wide. But its people have been taught to bow low. Yet every nation has its breaking point. The government's silence is cracking. The army, once monolithic, now whispers. The church calls for justice more openly. Even some traditional chiefs, long loyal to the regime, now speak of transition. And beneath the surface, the ground shakes. It is said that when the lion sleeps too long, even the forest forgets how to fear. But when the lion awakens, the forest trembles again. Cameroon is that lion caged, tranquilized, humiliated, but still alive. And the moment that lion roars, Central Africa will feel the quake. Foreign powers know it. That is why they watch so closely. Not because they love democracy, but because they fear contagion. They fear that if Cameroon stands, others will follow, and the architecture of control will collapse. For decades, Cameroon has been the buffer, the stable partner, the reliable ally. Western capitals praise Bayer not for progress, but for obedience. Aid flows in exchange for silence. Contracts flow in exchange for loyalty. But loyalty bought with hunger does not last forever. Even within the ruling party, cracks appear. Younger politicians whisper of generational renewal. Civil servants, once docile, now leak documents of corruption. The empire within begins to eat itself. In this chaos, Traore's message hits like lightning. Power is not a gift you receive. It is a force you conquer. To the Cameroonian youth, those words sound less like inspiration, more like instruction. They have seen what obedience brings: unemployment, exile, despair. They have learned that fear feeds tyranny. In the heart of yonder university, a student once shouted during a silent vigil, "If they will not give us power, we will give ourselves memory." The crowd erupted, because memory, not violence, is the first weapon of liberation. Ibrahim Traoré knows that well. That is why his speeches resonate not as foreign propaganda, but as ancestral callings. He speaks to something older than politics, to the buried conscience of a continent. The chains in Cameroon are no longer made of iron. They are made of fear. And when fear breaks, every gate opens. Tonight, as the capital sleeps, Une.